Good afternoon, Andrew. Thank you for joining me on the Sami Parvez show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, Sammy. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm fabulous. Thank you very much. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining me. Okay, so why are you running in this election?
Well, that's a great question with a big long answer, but I'll try and keep it short. Essentially, the things that motivate me the most. I came to Canada as an immigrant. My parents and I defected from communist Czechoslovakia.
Mhm.
And so, really, since forever, I've been politically aware in terms of, what happens to a country and a people when government takes way too much control of their, in Czechoslovakia, it was their everything,
Mhm.
lives, work, uh, you know, a single party communist system owns the populace, basically.
Yep.
So I've been essentially politically aware all my life, and probably as a result, leaned conservative when you know how they say if you're not a liberal when you're young.
Mhm.
Well, I was never a liberal, probably for that reason. Um, but recently, um, when I saw a internet forum for new blue candidates, I decided I would fill out their form, and they would tell me no thanks, and I could move along
Mhm.
and just be done with it. But they kept saying yes, and so I said, well, I guess I'm running for office, and it was something I've always considered, but I guess it took uh, a little bit of I guess luck or a leap of either foolishness or faith to get into it. So here I am.
Mhm. Yep. Okay. So how much are you optimistic that the support are you are receiving from particularly from your own constituents? So do you seeing like do you have enough supports or supporters?
Do I think, are you asking if you think I can win?
Yeah, technically yes.
Um, Obviously, New Blue is a new party,
Mhm.
and I'm a candidate with obviously ties to the community, and some people know who I am, but I don't have great big name recognition. And of course, we're running against two of the biggest political machines, definitely in the province and probably in the country.
Mhm.
So to say that I am confident that I will win is a bit of a stretch. I think everybody knows that we're an underdog.
Mhm.
Um, I have had very encouraging signs that the word is getting out. When I've emailed some acquaintances of mine telling them that I'm running for office and sending them my poster and that kind of thing, they many of them have already told me that they already knew that.
Mhm.
So I thought that was pretty good. I ran into a fellow yesterday in Lakefield. A couple of older gents were taking a walk out in the snow, and I stopped them to give them my campaign poster. And one of them almost jumped out of his boots and said, "I know you. You're Andrew. I've looked you up." And I'm like, "Wow, okay. Well, I guess the word is getting out." So
Wow, that's great.
that was a really interesting surprise, and I almost didn't know what to say to him. I was almost like, "Wow, okay. Anything you want to ask me? What do you want to talk about?" So that was interesting. And I must say, I think maybe Ford has made a miscalculation in terms of his very obviously cynical decision to put the election right in the middle of February or at the end of February, but the campaign in the middle, and hoping that voter turnout will be low. You never know how that stuff is going to come around to bite you in the you know what. Because when voter turnout is low, every vote becomes much, much bigger.
Yep.
So if our guys and gals can mobilize themselves, and if the word gets out enough, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, if it would be like two-sided, it would be great. I'm just wondering it should not be a one-sided what polls are suggesting earlier, like, but no one knows like until the votes are counted. So then we know, like maybe like I can see like lots of like signs, particularly from a new blue party are out. Like I can see it. I'm living in Kitchener, Cambridge, Waterloo, or
Yeah,
in particularly in Gulf. I can see like your party signs out
that's good.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I always encourage people to get out and vote, particularly vote for independent candidate or similar parties like yours. So,
yeah.
can you please tell me, like, have you been interviewed before this one to any media, particularly national media or independent media?
I've been interviewed by several Peterborough newspapers
Mhm,
and the local contingent of Global News. And I'm supposed to have a promotional video on a community cable channel called Your TV that operates here in Peterborough. That's where they play all the Pete's games. So
mhm,
everybody knows what that is around here. I haven't seen that video go up yet, but hopefully that's going to happen. Uh, I must say, I mean, I haven't been interviewed by national media, probably because if that was proposed to them, they'd be like, Andrew, who is that guy? Why do I care about that guy?
mhm,
But I am actually, believe it or not, I'm quite surprised at how fairly I've been treated by the Peterborough media, especially the Examiner. Uh, and I know, the media people tend to be on the left most of the time. Everybody knows that. But I must say, like every time I open one of their articles, I'm just like going, "Oh God, how are they going to make me look like a complete nut job?" But they don't. They've really been fair about it. I'm pleasantly surprised by that.
mhm. Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, like I have noticed like the smaller parties and independent candidate are always being ignored. Like I was reading like yesterday, day before yesterday from my own riding like Kitchener, they were interviewing only the four major parties, not the smaller parties candidates. It is completely a biasism of these national media. Okay, so let's talk about like some issues like which I already mentioned to you what we are going to discuss, what I always to ask my guest. So we see like lots of issue, but there is one issue which should not happen in Ontario, neither in Canada, which is wage theft. So, like, there is like lots of wage theft ongoing, but it seems like government is giving deaf air on this issue, and like and like media is not giving it much attention. I don't know like why they don't care about this issue. So, what would you do differently as an elected official, or your party would do like to make sure this should not happen again?
Yeah, that's a uh, it's a again it's a question that should have a short and simple answer. And I guess if I was one of the other candidates, I would make some sort of empty promise that the government will deal with it all.
Mhm,
The problem here is that we are living in a society where essentially government is the only game in town for everything,
mhm,
almost everything. Uh, our tax rate is 75%. I know people, sometimes people just are like, what are you talking about? So they can't wrap their heads around that. But more and more people are starting to understand that that's the case. And when that's the case, everyone is beholden to government all the time. So
mhm,
there's no recourse for anyone. There's no recourse for people if they're being mistreated in one job because the jobs are scarce, the economy is a basket case in Ontario. There's no recourse for saying, well, I'm not going to work for you anymore. I'm going to go work for this guy who's actually going to pay me my wages properly.
mhm,
There's no incentive for government to do anything proper and right because they don't have to. They have us exactly where they want us. They know it. That's been the message of our local PC MPP, who essentially will just look at people, even people who helped him get elected in his last campaign.
mhm,
He will look at them and say, I'm not doing anything for you. See you on election day.
Mhm.
And so that's the pervasive attitude of government in our society right now.
Yep.
And so when a sort of large corporate, I guess I don't want to use a buzzword, but let's say abuser
Mhm.
comes along and mistreats employees and does things that are obviously illegal, there's no real consequences for that. There's no real immediate incentive for the employer or for the government to do anything about it. And we've got to realize, I think, that we cannot keep looking to government to solve all of our problems when they really are the biggest problem we have. And the situation, in my opinion, is fixed. It sounds strange, but it's fixed very, very easily. We simply need to lower the tax rate drastically. That will spur the economy. That'll mean more jobs for people, and more jobs means I get to pick where I work. If I don't
Mhm.
like the guy I'm working for here, I get
Yep.
to pick another job here because there's 3 or 4 jobs open to me at all times. It almost doesn't matter what your level of skill is or your
Yep.
chosen vocation.
Mhm.
So we first must realize where we're living and what our situation is, and that our situation in general is not normal. It's not good. It's not reasonable. We're living in a very government controlled, I suppose you could say, left wing existence. And as soon as we realize that and decide, okay, that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable that our economy is doing poorly because we were once an industrial powerhouse. It's unacceptable to have people living in tents. It's unacceptable to have people lining up outside to try and get a doctor. It's unacceptable to have people dying in hospital hallways. As soon as we realize that that is not normal, that is the beginning of the end of that kind of oppression. And the same goes with this issue concerning wage theft. I mean, no, I mean that's a sleazy thing to do, obviously, and it's against the law, and the people doing it should be prosecuted and punished.
Mhm.
But if we want it to come to an end, we need to make sure that businesses could not possibly get away with that kind of behavior economically.
Yep. You are right. Like, but we still see like companies like Simplify Supply Chain Solution and Dutchies, and there are some other restaurants. And I'm hearing like even though people are being trained, they are not being paid for training because like they say, oh, this is training, you are not skillful for that job, so you need those training. But it seems like like our books are full like with the rules and regulation, but they are not being practically implemented at the workplace. And our government, like Doug Ford is still the premier, like he said that it mean is government put like some more like penalties increasing the fine, but fine are not going to fix the problem. We need some practical action against the corporate. So do you suggest like something harsh penalties should be implemented to these corporates who are violating labor laws, such as lifetime ban for doing business or shutting down the full business?
I would generally say there are laws on the books for this already. The fact is that the laws are not being enforced, and that's not really a new thing for the government of Ontario.
Yep.
The government of Ontario ignores its own laws almost at will. We've seen that under COVID,
Mhm.
when they completely ignored the Bill of Rights, several medical privacy laws. They even ignored their own the provisions in the Reopen Ontario Act that allowed for um, choice and what's the word I'm looking for? Essentially, rejection of mandates.
Mhm.
Section at the end of that act that stipulates that exemptions exist and should be respected, and no one respected them. So Parliament ignores itself now.
Yep.
And I don't think there's really much use in dictating some sort of harsh penalties because there are already penalties that are not being enforced.
Hmm.
So really, the question is, how do we make government accountable to the people? And they will never be accountable to the people when they own 75% of our lives. That's just never going to happen. I mean, I
Hmm.
said this I mean, it touches every subject. I said this at a debate we had about homelessness maybe a week and a bit ago here in Peterborough. First thing I got up and said was, the homelessness problem will never, ever be solved by government. It is never going to happen. Everything these candidates tell you is a empty platitude
Hmm.
because government doesn't have to do anything when they have this level of control over our lives.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So as you brought up like homelessness, let's jump to housing crisis. Like, so what is the main? So what do you think? What are the main causes of housing crisis?
Sorry, Sammy. I
Yeah.
forgot
Yeah.
another phone here that I didn't
Yeah.
turn
Yeah.
off.
Sure.
In
Sure.
one
Sure.
moment. I turned off the personal phone. I forgot about the work
No.
phone.
No.
Sorry.
It's okay, sir. Okay. So I'm going to ask you.
Did you finish your question there? I'm sorry.
No, like it's okay. So so what do you think? Like what are the main causes of housing crisis and homelessness?
Um, Homelessness itself is, excuse me, something that has lots of factors involved, and I don't think anyone can say particularly one thing is responsible for homelessness. But certainly, um, the the current situation where life is extremely expensive is a perfect storm in terms of making people homeless who perhaps are going through a hard time. Everybody goes through difficult times in one way or another. Some people have the sort of financial, I suppose, wherewithal or backing or family support to weather some of their failures in life. That happens to everybody. I've had my own of those. I'm sure you have too.
Yep.
Um, the problem is when life is so expensive that it puts people at risk who were, for lack of a better term, maybe just barely hanging on, to an apartment or some place to live or a tenuous job. That's probably problem number one. If I had to look at a single cause. The reason housing is essentially so expensive, and this is my campaign party trick. I can revert everything to taxes because everything is about taxes.
Hmm.
Housing is expensive. I saw a statistic the other day that really confirmed my analysis on this. The through taxes, the hidden taxes that go into building a house, raise the sticker price of the house. This is the pre-tax price by 36%. That's a huge number right there. And that kind of taxation makes everything expensive. And on top of it, I've seen this in specific examples from my own writing. Uh, Over-regulation and sort of unscrupulous dealings by city councils make it very, very difficult for anyone to build houses. It's uh, it's a big issue, but it's at a crisis level basically because the people who are good at building houses are being punished for being good at it. They're being punished with taxes, and the people who need the housing the most are, of course, also dealing with the price of the housing, the price of everything else in their life, and the lack of decent employment, which touches on the first issue we were talking about,
Hmm.
things like unscrupulous stuff like wage theft and employer abuses. So the housing issue is also a tax issue, and I know that that's not a subject that, people can feel emotional about and pump their fist in the air about, but the cause is the cause, and I'm not going to pretend that it's not. That's essentially what we're dealing with here is a society where everything is super expensive and our taxes are very, very high, and our wages, our real wages are very, very low. I'm sure you've heard the statistic that we have the GDP of something like was it Mississippi, the state of Mississippi, one of the poorest U.S. states.
Yeah.
That is a uh, that is a absolute joke. That should not be happening in Ontario, and the only reason it's happening is because essentially everyone's initiative, everyone's desire to build a life for themselves is being muted and discouraged by just an absolutely punitive tax situation.
Hmm. Okay.
So yeah,
Go ahead. Yeah, I said like you said like 1 week or 2 week ago in a debate you said like government cannot fix the homelessness. So who can fix the homelessness?
only only the people creating a prosperous, free uh, economy overall. The only way you fix homelessness is to create a society where jobs are easy to come by, energy and things like rent and food are cheap, and essentially the kind of real wages that we had in, sometime in the 70s and 80s. That's how you fix it. Probably home, like almost every social problem, there's no way to bring it to absolute zero, right? There will always be someone who's going through a tough time. As long as the problem is small, though, excuse me, as long as the problem is small, community initiatives like tiny homes, homeless shelters, government organizations, charities, churches can handle a small homelessness problem and help people who are in that situation, and they should. They should be free to do so. But the kind of problem we have now, where thousands of people across the province are living in tents, that's not a problem that can be solved um, on the results side. It has to be solved on the causes side. And
Hmm.
the cause is that we have a society that is so expensive to live in that perhaps I don't want to call these people the bottom. I don't see it as top and bottom. I just see it as people at risk
Hmm.
of that kind of event in their life are in a much worse situation right now than they would be if life was cheap and the people had the power to create businesses, employ people, pay them what they're worth. That'll only happen in a free and prosperous economy.
Hmm. And so do you support a universal basic income?
No, I do not.
So why there should not be a universal basic income?
Uh, Not to try to make a joke about it, but it'll definitely be basic. If it ever comes into existence, it'll be more basic than you can stand if you're on it. That's one thing. It's very similar to why nobody wants to live in a house built by the government.
Hmm.
Uh, no one wants to live on a wage guaranteed by the government. I mean, we could sit here for 4 or 5 hours talking about the historical examples of that. Um, it's a wrong-headed approach. The only way in which could ever possibly consider that, and I really don't want to leave the door open to it because I think it's a terrible idea in so many different ways. But the only way that could ever really be considered is really with a just an absolute destruction of our tax system and just a full reform, and then perhaps we could talk about that. But I generally don't think it's a good idea.
Mhm.
Because also, I mean, kind of going back to the subject of homelessness, when you have government control like this, it takes away people's purpose in their life. The purpose of life is to govern your own affairs and to see your life before you and to make of it what you think you can. And once you take that away from people, what are we doing here? And then you see mental health issues, particularly in men, addiction issues, um, you know, failure of marriages, failure of relationships, children who don't have the attention of their parents because their parents are constantly trying to, you know, keep their heads above water.
Mhm.
There's so many negative results from taking people's initiative and their control of their life away that it's just an incredibly bad idea. It's a much better idea to make sure that you know a bag of milk doesn't cost $20 because that's where we're headed.
Mhm. Yep. Okay. So let's jump to another topic, healthcare. Like we see, like there is also crisis of healthcare. Like every Ontarian does not have a family doctor. If you walk in to a walk-in clinic, so you need to wait for 4, 5, 6, maybe sometime 10 hours to see a doctor.
Yeah.
So what plan do you or your party is to tackle down this issue?
Well, the issue of healthcare has similar or really the same cause as every other social issue. Government is the only game in town. And I was just at a debate, unfortunately, at the Chamber of Commerce. They didn't see fit to allow me to debate because New Blue doesn't have any seats in Parliament.
Mhm.
But the candidates there were talking about how Ontario is training doctors and how there are more university places open. And I thought to myself, okay, you're training them. What are you going to do when they come out of training? You're going to chain them to the hospital door handle because
Mhm.
they all want to leave. Nobody wants to work here as a doctor. Nobody wants to. I mean, if you have a job, training for a job where, um, let's say, someone in Florida or North Carolina or some such place desperately wants your skills, are you going to stay in Ontario? Of course not. No, nobody wants to work here, and that has to change. And I don't care if we train a million doctors, we're not going to have people staying up here to work because they'll be in demand in some place that's better to live. And so that starts all your shortages, doctor shortages, nurse shortages, all kinds of medical practitioners. The only people that want to work up here are people with who can get themselves cushy government administrator jobs, and they have no incentive to change the system because if the system is successful, they become redundant. So again, we have a problem that government is the only game in town, and this is not just a. I mean, not that it wasn't serious enough to say that people can't get a doctor and emergency time waiting times in emergency rooms are sometimes 8, 9, 12 hours. uh, it it's also having a very detrimental effect on our moral fiber because doctors um, who want to mobilize their conscience in terms of doing their job, they can't do that in a system that forces them to perform surgeries that they don't think are correct, to give patients advice that they don't think is correct.
Mhm.
Again, government is the only game in town, and we have no alternatives. And that is a recipe for disaster. And that's why healthcare is a disaster. It doesn't even matter how much believe me when I tell you, I know this is wild, but if someone's watching this, it doesn't even matter how much money you pump into it. It will not solve the problems. This system cannot work the way it is any better than it's working right now, and it's pretty awful at the moment.
Mhm. Okay, so should we prioritize our healthcare system would make it better?
No, And this is another thing that's maybe difficult to understand because it's kind of a new concept. I would leave government systems exactly as they are. Healthcare can continue being what it is. The education system can continue being what it is. None of that particularly bothers me. What is the problem is that there is no private sector for anything because the people don't have their own money. If the people are given back their power and their money, and money isn't everything, I realize that, but it's the way you mobilize your life. It's the way you mobilize your decisions in our society is to have money to send your kids to whatever school you want to send them to start up a school if you're an educator with a certain idea of how a school should look, to start a hospital, to start a MRI clinic, to start a perhaps a nursing home, things like that. You need resources and you need your initiative and you need to be able to have a private sector that takes these things seriously and allows people to work where they are talented the way they want to work. Then government can continue running hospitals for whoever wants to use government hospitals. I have no problem with that. I just want choice. I want to be able to reasonably choose between government schools and private schools for the education of I have one child. I want the people of Ontario to be able to choose. Right now, there is no practical choice. People say, "Oh, send your kids to private school." Sure, if I've got an extra 10 G's a semester laying around, then I can do that. But nobody in a sort of normal financial situation has the money for that. We don't need to privatize anything. Government can stay precisely as it is, except for we need our money back. We need to make our own decisions. We need to build our own institutions without their interference and without them essentially robbing us of our future and our initiative. So, to your point, I get on a bit of a rant sometimes,
Yeah, no
but
worries.
to your point, privatization in terms of government selling off assets, thinking that'll make the problem better, it won't. Privatization is not the point. Taxation is the point. Once that is fixed, privatization becomes private sector grows and becomes viable. It doesn't have to be privatized like you're invasively doing something to a government program and making it private.
Mhm.
Private options will grow on their own when people have money. And that's essentially the mistake. It seems like previous sort of conservative reformers, like your Preston Mannings and to a degree,
Yeah.
now I can't remember. I'm terrible with names. I can't remember the name of the Ontario premier before the
Katie,
Liberals.
Katie, where I don't know, like I
In any
forgot.
case, whatever his name was, his approach was to privatize public systems, thinking that would save that would make efficiencies and make the thing cheaper, but it won't if taxes are as high as they are. I propose a reversal of that
Mhm.
process. Government can stay what it is, but I want my money back so that I can build my own future.
Mhm. Yeah, and also like it mean the just to understand it clearly your answer, you mean like government should also let the private business or private hospital to run, like, and the taxes should be lower, that if Ontarians or Canadians want to use private system or private institution or even though educational institution they can go there, like they must have the choice.
Correct.
But at
That's
this
exactly what I'm saying.
but at this time we don't have any choice.
That's right.
Yeah, and what, like, we always need doctors, like we need a foreign doctors or foreign nurses or other healthcare facilities member. So what should we do more to encourage our own cities and or those kids who are just in school or just graduating to get toward healthcare like get through healthcare, like be a doctor or be a nurse or be something related to health facilities. So what do you think what should be done?
I don't think we have to do anything, to be honest. I think people come naturally with their own talents. and their own passions, I suppose, and the people who find, that their passion is music can be musicians, and the people who find that their passion and their initiative is for driving a truck, then they should do that.
Yeah.
And there will be plenty of people growing up in Canada if they're free and prosperous and they have their parents' support and attention. There will be more doctors than you can shake a stick at because there are people out there who want to do that job, who want to do it well, and who just need the free choice and their self-determination back so they can pursue that dream the way they want to. And we'll have, I mean, I wish that I could paint a mental picture for everyone who listens to me about what I envision our society looking like.
Hmm.
And it would be a place where the natural positive initiatives of people would be able to flourish without you don't have to sort of poke them into being a doctor. They'll find it themselves if that's where they're meant to be.
Hmm. And okay, let's talk about immigration. I know like this is a federal issue, but it all goes to the province. Like when it comes to deal with the immigration, like we see like lots of people are just jumping in here, particularly in Ontario. So should there be a cap, or should we stop bringing in like more immigration, or particularly refugees who will be more dependent on government?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an immigrant myself, and I suppose I never really classified myself as a refugee, but certainly fleeing a communist regime comes with some risks, right? If you get sent back during your defection, you're in some pretty hot water, and luckily in Czechoslovakia, the punishments were not as lavish as they were in some other places like Poland and Russia and yeah, some other places in Eastern Europe. But I think when you politicize immigration and do it for the wrong reasons, then you create chaos. And essentially, what you're doing is by bringing people into the country simply to either make your economic numbers look better or to achieve some sort of political goal so that you can brag about who you're helping and how generous you are, I think is wrong-headed. The reason, if we were to bring people into Canada, it would be because Canada has a culture and a outlook on what each person should be working towards and what our attitude to freedom and self-determination is. And the people who want to be in Canada for that reason, I think, can probably come here, certainly not in unlimited numbers, but that should be the focus. People who want to come to Canada to be Canadian. And if we're going to define what that is, we've got to have a definition of it. What does it mean to be Canadian?
Hmm.
It's not, in my opinion, just not being American. That's not good enough. To to me, being Canadian has to include some kind of outlook on what our rights and responsibilities are as citizens. And if people come here and don't agree with those rights and responsibilities, they shouldn't be Canadians. And that's just the way I look at it. I could care less what color people are. I could care less where they come from. I don't like uh, government giving particular advantages in immigration to a particular country, to a particular race of people. I want people who want to come here to make their lives uh, better and contribute to what Canada really is.
Hmm.
Because I'm that type of person. So our immigration system is broken not only because of the numbers and not only because of where people are being taken from. Those things are also problematic, but mostly because it's being done as a almost like a club that the government holds so that they can bash down their detractors and critics and use it as a political tool. And I think that that has to stop.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you. You are right. Okay, thank you again for your time,
Fabulous.
Andrew. So, what's your message to Peterborough residents? Why should they vote for you in this election?
Well, I got into this election to tell the truth, and I will accept if the truth gets me elected. I will accept the job and put my full work ethic and talent to bear for the people of my riding. The truth is, we need to take taxes down drastically. When we do that, government revenue will actually go up, not down. So we won't have to cut a dime from services. And those two uh, issues are things we've been lied to about for a very, very long time. It's my intention to tell the truth about those things. And I have essentially two answers for the what will you do if you get elected, right? Uh, there's the magic wand answer where if I had my way and I could transform Ontario immediately, what would I do? And there's the realistic answer that essentially, says that chances are New Blue probably won't form a majority. So what will you do in Parliament? I'll advocate constantly and without ceasing for the same things I'm talking about in my campaign. I'll put pressure on the whoever the governing party is to understand this truth and to give the people of my riding first, the people of Ontario, their lives back. And that's essentially my message.
Okay, thank you once again, Andrew, for joining me on the Sami Parvez show. I always ask to my guests who are political candidates like you. So, as you are running right now as a candidate, you have never elected. So, would you, if you get elected, would you appear again on the Sami Parvez show?
Absolutely, I would.
Okay.
Anytime you want to talk to me, Sammy, you let me know and we'll talk.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much. Yeah, once again, yeah, hopefully seeing you again after this election. And until then, wishing you very best on your election campaign and looking forward to seeing you the next MPP for Peter Scarborough.
That would be fabulous. Thank you very much again, Sammy.
My pleasure. Thank you. You take care and have a good one.
Bye.